Hello and welcome to Coffee, a very full cup of coffee with Lyman. Today what I want to do is start off, since you know I like coffee, I'm going to take you into the kitchen and show you how I produced this cup of coffee. Are you ready? Let's begin. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to show you how to make what my grandfather would call, of course he'd call that for any kind of good coffee, a goddamn good cup of coffee. It's not really the technical word name, but you know. Okay, so first, got my bag of coffee beans. Coffee beans. And you want your coffee beans to be packaged no more than a couple weeks ago. You know, you get them as close as you can. But some of these companies, have to get my coffee grinder, but some of these companies that sell coffee beans, they'll sell them a couple months old and say that the expiration date is a year from now. Well, if you really want good fresh coffee, you buy good coffee beans. I live in Korea, and this is the best I can do here for where I go shopping, are these beans, okay? And this particular package was just produced, or packaged I should say, about, I guess, a month ago. Alright, so because I'm in Korea, the voltage is 240. This coffee grinder I have, a little cheapy, just blades inside, it runs on 110. So we turn on the old transformer, go like this. We're going to grind the beans. Now I like my coffee strong, so excuse me, got to get a spoon, and we're going to put in 2 heaping tablespoons. This is what Koreans use for a spoon. It's a soup spoon. They don't really use teaspoons and tablespoons, but this is about the size of a tablespoon. 2 heaping, and just a few beans extra because I am me. It's what I do. Okay, right away seal up the bag so she stays as fresh as it can. Put the top on, and we let it grind. I don't try to make it exceptionally fine. I don't want it so coarse that I got chunks of beans, but I let her go a little while here. Okay, that's probably good enough. Take the cup. Now notice there's no water in the cup. Knock out a few of the crumbs that are stuck to the lid, and here we go with this. Get it all knocked out. You can see the blades in there. Okay. Put the top on, turn everything off, unplug it from the wall. Put the old grinder away. Then we're going to head back to my classroom and put some hot water in the grounds. So here we are in the beloved classroom. This is where I teach English one-on-one to my students. Of course, the pandemic has put a stop to that for the last year, but I'll get back to it. Now, we've got the fresh ground coffee beans. All we need now is some boiling water. Let the old water pot get good and hot. I already preheated it so we wouldn't have to wait so long. I like to get it to a nice rapid boil. And the aroma of fresh ground coffee beans, oh my goodness. The kind I buy, the company packages them from Guatemala, Mexico, Peru, and that might be all. I've tried all of them. Peru tastes the best. There, we got the coffee boiling, or the water boiling. So we just pour it in the cup. Fill it right up to the top. There you go. I let that steep for a few minutes. Give it a little shake once in a while. And what's going to happen is the coffee grounds absorb the water. The grounds no longer can float. They go to the bottom of the cup, most of them. And I drink my coffee. When I'm done, I've got a thick layer of grounds in the bottom of the cup. And I can put some more water in there if I want to make up another cup after maybe I've drank this one down halfway. Still a really good cup of coffee. And it's really good cold also. Coffee. Okay, so now you know how this was made. And it is delicious. Now, aside from coffee, what I wanted to talk to you today about was a little bit of my past. And I thought I'd throw in something humorous here. From the years of 1974 to 1984, I worked in a place that was called the St. Paul Union Stockyards Company. Now, St. Paul, Minnesota. St. Paul is the capital of Minnesota. And a union, you probably know what a union is, right? They protect the workers' rights. So it was called the St. Paul Union Stockyards. A stockyard is a place where livestock, cattle, hogs, cows, pigs, sheep, and calves come on truck. Used to be mostly by rail, but in later years, because this place started in 1886, but in later years, when I worked there, it was exclusively by truck. Okay, now, the stockyards was quite a place. It's many, many acres in the town of South St. Paul, Minnesota, right next to the Mississippi River. Now, when this place was started, that was pretty much all the countryside. However, as time progressed, the city sort of, St. Paul kind of expanded and met up with South St. Paul and became just one big, huge city, suburb kind of place. And slowly squeezed out the stockyards, which ended up simply ended totally. The last animal was sold in that stockyard in 2008. But I'd already left in 1984. So I worked there for 10 years. But during that time, I met a crew of fantastic people. There were all the guys, the people who worked for the Union Stockyards. There were about 150 of us at that time. Earlier days when the yards was much bigger, it was about 600 union employees. And you had all the people who came there who were commission men. Those were the men who worked in the companies in the stockyards that received the livestock and sold the livestock to order buyers. And the order buyers were people who worked for other companies whose job was to come to the stockyards, buy livestock to go to the slaughterhouses to be killed. And there were big, huge slaughterhouses around the stockyards, and also they were shipped out of the city to big feedlots and far line slaughterhouses and such. Okay? Well, it was quite a place. When I got out of my pickup truck in the morning, I lived about 10 miles from there. I started at 5:30 in the morning, and it was like you stepped back 100 years in time. I wore a big old cowboy hat and had a handlebar mustache, and I was just a young guy. Worked there from the time I was 18 to 28. So anyway, my job was to handle the crippled livestock. So any cattle or hogs, cows, pigs, that would come to the stockyards, maybe they were sick and couldn't walk on their own, they'd fall down, or they were injured, they broke a leg or something, my job and one other man who I worked with on this little Ford tractor with an iron trailer behind it, about 8 feet long was the trailer. We went all over the stockyards all day, picking up injured livestock. Cattle would go to one or two of the packing houses, we'd take them there, I'd shoot them in the head with a .22 rifle, put a chain on them and hoist them up into the slaughterhouse, and away they'd go. Same thing with the hogs. Mostly, sometimes we took them to pens to be put out on trucks, taken away. But most of them would go to a big armor packing house. It was the largest packing house by size in, I can't remember, the world of the United States. Right there. And anyways, we'd go up in a tractor, we'd go up on a big cement viaduct in a livestock elevator, we'd go up to the 6th floor of this huge packing house and unload all these pigs that we had that were injured, and a government veterinarian would look at them, say they were okay for people, fit for human consumption. I'd shoot them in the head, they'd go up on a chain, and off they'd go, and we'd leave and continue on with our job in the stockyards, picking up other animals. So anyways, I did that for 10 years. And one of those years I actually stopped doing that and went on the night shift. But then I came back to days, and so 9 of those 10 years, that's what I did. Well, you meet a lot of interesting people in a job like that. You might imagine there were quite a few characters. All these old truckers who'd come there every day with their livestock, unload them, and other big semi-tractor trailers would come in the other end of the stockyards and take them out after they'd been bought and take them away someplace. Well, a lot of guys like to play jokes. There was always some kind of a joke going on. Sometime I'll tell you what a Skype hunt is. That's kind of a dirty joke you play on someone. But today I want to tell you about something I thought was really funny. Everything started very early in the morning there. We had these scale houses. They were called a scale house. And what that was for the cattle and the hogs, they were separate places, but there were several of them in the stockyards. They'd put the hogs, they'd walk the hogs down an alley, and they'd be on this great big scale, giant big scale the size of a room. And inside the scale house, right next to the scale, a person would weigh them. They'd have this sliding weight on a beam, and they'd weigh them and punch a ticket. Well, there's a fellow who'd run one of those places each day. That was his job. He was called a counter. And his job was responsible to make sure he knew where all the animals went and the weights were right, the paperwork was right. So he'd get to work extra early each morning. And he'd sit in his scale house and basically read the newspaper. Well, he noticed that every morning, one of the fellows who came in very early with his truckload of livestock each day, he'd come walking across the yards, going through the gates, because everything was fences and pens. And this guy would always walk right beside this man's scale house. And the guy had on coveralls and a big coat, and each time he'd stop, he'd take off his coveralls because nobody was around. It was early before the scale opened, right? So this guy would take a dump right there, because in the stockyards there's manure, dung, poop from the animals all over the place. You try to keep it cleaned up, but there's always a lot around. So he would take a little poop right there outside next to the scale house on the other side of this fence. Nobody around, nobody knew, except the guy in the scale house, who the truck driver never knew he was there. So this guy thought, hey, I'm going to play a little trick on this fella. So one morning he decided to go outside of the scale house and wait around the far side of the house. And when he saw the trucker coming, he saw him get up on the other side of the fence there, take off his coat, pull down his coveralls and all that, and squat down, get ready to go poo right next to the fence. knowing that nobody was around to see him, and he did it every day. Well, the guy from the scale house, the counter, he had a long-handled flat shovel that they used for cleaning the alleyways there. He took that shovel and very quietly walked up around the other side of the building where the trucker was, slid his shovel under the fence, and the trucker, poop, poop, on the shovel. The guy pulls the shovel back and just kind of stands back and watches what happens. Well, when this guy felt comfortable with the situation and was all done with his job, most people tend to take a peek at what they just created, right? Whether it be in the toilet or it was on the ground. You got to take a look at that poop. I don't know why, but most people do that. So this guy looked and there was nothing there. And he was like, so this fellow with the shovel, he was like, this is funny, right? And the next thing he knows, the guy got his pants and he's shaking his pants, he thought maybe he pooped in his pants. It didn't go on the ground. And this guy he couldn't find it. And after a while, he just gave up, put on his clothes, and went away. And I thought that was one of the greatest tricks I've ever heard pulled on anyone. That was in the St. Paul Union Stockyards. So, to coffee, to the Stockyards, and to you. My, that's good. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again the next time. Goodbye for now. And as I'm en route to the classroom from the kitchen, I thought I'd give you a quick shot of our lovely living room. We have a nice view. Unfortunately, across the street they're going to be putting up some 15-story apartment complex all along here. So our view will be blocked, but it's been really nice for the past 10 years. As you can see, my wife loves plants. And if we look over here a little bit, what do we see? More plants. And here in the bedroom, guess what? More plants. And if you can hear the background sound of heavy equipment working, they're getting ready to put in those apartments. Start digging a hole. They tore the old ones down.